Thank you everyone for bearing with us until the end of the session. We have a guest speaker today. His name is Christian, who is here. Hi, Christian. I hope I'm pronouncing and saying your name correctly.
Yes, correct? It's good. Thank you.
Cool.
Thanks for having me.
Great. Yeah, of course. Our pleasure. So I will just quickly say how I know Christian and how I decided to involve him. So when I joined AWS, we were in the same internal training together. And I remember we were building a capstone project together. Back in that time, I was very newbie. I was very nervous. I didn't know how to build and like how to get my hands dirty. But Christian was very supportive and helpful during the project. And I remember his ambition saying that, hey, one day I want to build something my own. Which kind of got stuck with me. And since then, I kept an eye on your activities, Christian, internally and externally as well on LinkedIn. And recently, I saw some changes over from Christian's side, and I decided why not to invite him to the session to talk about your background, what did you do in AWS, before AWS, and what you're doing now. So over to you, Christian.
Yeah. Thank you, Jamila. Yeah, so Indeed, we met in that training. That was when I first started in my role as specialist SA at AWS. But I should start with my background. So I started my career back like 15 plus years ago, back in the university as a Linux sysadmin. And for a few years, I've been in the university just playing with Linux systems, and there was a lot of fun, trying all sorts of things. Eventually, after I finished university, I was hired at Nokia, where I was again sysadmin, building things in the data center for developers. And it was DevOps before it was known as DevOps. And a few years later, in Nokia, they were trying to sell this part of Nokia. So it was the location business of Nokia. And Nokia tried to focus on networking gear. So that's when also they sold the devices business to Microsoft. And as they were trying to sell this, we were already for a year or so in AWS. So I started around 2013 with AWS, and this was like a year or so later. And there was a lot of pressure to cut costs in that part of the business to make it more appealing to prospective buyers. And basically, I was always like this kind of techie who was trying to build things, to automate all sorts of things. And I got an idea for a tool that would allow us to optimize the cost using Spot instances. So at the time, we were using auto-scaling groups, and basically the idea was to make it easy to adopt Spot instances in existing groups by replacing their instances with Spot clones. And you essentially, you had something running in the account. I built it with Lambda and with Go, back when there was no support for Go in Lambda. So I did it was a really fun project to build these things. And basically out of this, it became a pretty popular open source project called AutoSpotting. And that was started around 2015 and open source in 2016. So I was still at here, and I was trying to build like a side business offering like support for this tool. And so that was not really working out. And I realized that it was very easy to deploy, and people didn't really need support. I also was struggling to be like visible and promote it and do all sorts of marketing things. So at the time, I got this call from some AWS recruiter saying they would like to hire me in AWS at professional services. And since I was trying to build this professional services business, I thought, maybe that's a fun place to learn the ropes of like being a professional services consultant. And maybe one day I could do this on my own again after I had this failure. So I joined that role. I was in that role for about a year. But as soon as I joined AWS, I was approached by a bunch of people from the Spot service team, because my tool was pretty popular in the space, and they knew me from before joining. So they were starting to involve me in like customer conversations. They involved me in meetings with their product people. So basically, with the service team, I got quite close from before joining the team. And yeah, eventually they offered me to change teams. So I joined the Spot service team as specialist SA for Spot. And that's when I met Jamila for the first time, and we had that project together. So I was working in that team for about 2 years, and got pretty familiar with Spot and Graviton. I started covering Graviton. So for about a year and a half, I was the main contact for Spot and Graviton in EMEA, and after a while focused on Germany. So basically it was really fun role, and I was like learning every day something new. But after like 2 years, I thought, okay, now I think I'm ready to go back to my own thing. And yeah, as of almost two months ago, I like doubled down on my cost optimization tools. So I left AWS, and now I'm building this this little business on cost optimization tooling. And I have the same tool, AutoSpotting, which I evolved a bit over the last couple of months. So I kept evolving it also while at AWS, but it was relatively slow. There was not so much time for that, but now I kind of double down on it. And yeah, I used a lot of these things that as an Amazonian, you get to learn, like working with customers and like reaching out to customers to see what their pain points are, and building, working backwards from their needs. So that's kind of what I'm trying to do now. And also all about being visible. So I've started publishing pretty much on a weekly basis stuff on LinkedIn. So I have like this newsletter, and
I get an email notification that you published on a solopreneurship, you're calling it, right? Like the weekly newsletter and all your journey. And I'm reading it sometimes, and I'm feeling, oh man, you never know, right? With whom you're working one day, that person or that product or that business can become a next meta, can become next big thing. So when I read it, I literally read with that passion that I hope one day this guy will become like that big business. And then I will say, one day, like back in times when I was young, I was in the same team, and we were working together in the same project. So I really see a lot of potential, and I really wish you luck with your business. I'd like to kind of chip in there and ask, what are you currently doing with AutoSpotting.io? So I see on your name, which is great that you put it there so people can see. What is exactly the business model like? How? So you mentioned that you were doubling down and you are putting all of your efforts in that product. What is the product by itself? Like, what are the services you are providing to the customers, and what are you learning in the meantime? And what was your experience in AWS, which kind of helped you to top up your experience and say that, okay, this is now time. I'm ready to be independent, and I know what I'm going to do.
Right. I mean, I hope there was such a long list of things you mentioned there, but basically I'm starting, as I said, to work using inputs from the customer. So that's a very important Amazonian principle, working backwards. And based on that, I've seen customers who are like struggling to like when it came to the way they were purchasing the tool. So it was open source, and now I put it on the marketplace, on the AWS marketplace, and I'm charging a percentage of the savings that the tool generates. It's 5% over the of the difference between spot price and on-demand price. So I give spot instances replacing on-demand instances, and they are typically up to 90% cheaper. I mean, depending on instance type and so on. But I'm trying to extract a little bit of that value and make a living out of it. And yeah, it's on the marketplace. It's probably the first, if not among the first few applications that are serverless on the AWS marketplace. And yeah, I had to, it's not really supported by the marketplace at the moment, but I figured out a bunch of workarounds to make it work. Like historically, I had workarounds when it came to Lambda. Like I built it from Lambda from day one with Golang, and Golang was not even supported by Lambda. So built all sorts of workarounds over time, as it was this cool side project of mine that I could try things out. But yeah, now that's kind of how it works. And
let me quickly ask here.
Yeah.
Sorry, let me quickly ask here. Let's say I'm a customer and I want to use Spot instances. And I do have lots of customers who are really keen to use Spot instances, but they are worried about cost, or they might lose their instances, etc. How or what is the instance, or what is the use case I can pitch your product, which I would happily do? Why not, right?
Yeah, so the main use case is when it comes to adopting Spot at relatively large scale. So think of customers who have an existing configuration, let's say in the dozens or hundreds of auto-scaling groups. It works only with auto-scaling groups, so it's not really supporting the like things without auto-scaling groups. So it relies on auto-scaling groups. But if you have like hundreds of them, the fact is that if you want to adopt Spot, you have to go to every single group and tweak the configuration and set a number of instance types there. You want to have diversification in place. So basically, for every single group, you have to go and configure the set of instance types that you allow for that group. And the way it works with AutoSpotting, starting from an on-demand configuration, it looks at the configuration of the group, and it automatically diversifies the list of instance types starting from that instance type configured initially on the group. And the only thing you need to do is tag the group with a value. And that tag could also be done by taking a tag that exists already on the group. So the application is configurable. You can say tag, like any groups that have this tag, replace them with Spot and put only like 40% of the capacity as Spot. So, and all this thing is configured outside of the groups, and it makes it easy to adopt Spot at scale. And at my former employer, what we did at some point was we had this large organization with hundreds of AWS accounts, and they had all the development teams given a production account and a development account. And at some point, what we did was we just went to all the development accounts and deployed this software and made it take everything in those accounts and convert to Spot. So literally overnight, those hundreds plus of accounts became optimized with Spot. And since they were development, like there were a few issues with some of the applications, but most of them didn't really cause any business impact, and the savings were really massive for that relatively small change. So yeah, that's kind of how it works, and that's the main benefit. Nowadays, I mean, out of this experience in the Spot service team, I got a few learnings, and I'm trying to improve the software so it gives better like diversification. And like what I'm doing now is adding support for ordering instance types by generation, and focusing on providing this additional value, like giving priority to newer instance types that are faster and cheaper compared to the older ones, which maybe if you're using capacity optimized by default, you may get an older instance type which is not so performant, but yeah, the price could be a bit better, but the fact that it's not performant will in a big group will cause like more instances to be launched and so on.
That's amazing.
So yeah,
that sounds really cool, and I see lots of comments on the chat that people are impressed, and I am impressed as well. Like, I didn't know the details and all the history behind it, which is really, really cool. Let me ask another question. So I know now the use case. I'll definitely keep in mind. What if some of the people got to know how the product works? Can they reach out to you, for example, like our BeSA participants or people who just figured out or found out your product? Can they reach out to you personally on LinkedIn asking for consultation, or do you have any price probably maybe for consultation, or how does it look like?
No, I'm actually very open to talking to all sorts of people. I have on my LinkedIn, I have this link for my calendar, so anybody can book a half an hour call and have a chat. I'm trying to talk to all sorts of people for like partnerships, potential prospects. So yeah, I'm happy to talk if there are any questions.
That's amazing. And are you planning any partnership with AWS directly, or are you already our partner, which is cool? Even I can invite you to speak to my customers.
Well, I think what I've seen is you need to have a company entity in order to be like an AWS partner from the partner network. And since I'm just one guy, I don't have a company yet. I'm like not really applicable for me. But yeah, I mean, considering my background, I still have relationships with a bunch of people from the Spot service team, and yeah, a lot of like a big network of SAs that I helped during the couple of years I've been SA. So yeah,
that's amazing.
More than happy to.
Yeah, amazing. That's awesome. Do you have any plans to scale your product? Is your product specifically currently used in EMEA, or are you planning to scale across the continents?
It's available worldwide. So anybody who has access to the marketplace can go there, and in 5 minutes, you can go get started with it, tag your first group, and see it running. So this product has been in the works for more than 5 years, and there is not so much more that I could do. I mean, there are things that I could do, but at some point there is like diminishing returns. So what I'm thinking, instead of building more on this particular product, I mean, I will build things based on customer feedback, but I'm thinking to build additional tools for cost optimization. So there are all sorts of things. Like I've started working on something for EBS volumes, and I'm considering all sorts of other ideas. And yeah, let's see what I can actually build. But I'm kind of inspired by all this indie hacker community that are people who, like, on their own do like build a tool that solves a certain problem, and then they live out of that, and they build these on like once a month or so they build a new tool. I mean, I'm not that fast yet, but I'll try to build more and more of these little tools that do a certain cost optimization, taking actions for optimizing things. So I have the second one for EBS volumes. Like you install it in the account, and it automatically converts all your GP2 volumes to GP3. So there are a lot of these little volumes that could be optimized for like 20% of savings and better performance by converting them with a single API call. And my tool does that continuously. And you still get those. Unfortunately, you still get those volumes launched, even if you launch the default AMI, like the last version of the Amazon Linux AMI. It still provisions a GP2. So it's surprising how slow people adopt these things, although it's like now a year and a half or 2 years since it's out. So yeah, these kind of tools I'm trying to build next.
That's amazing. That sounds really exciting, and I guess you are the only one who is who has these ideas and who is building. So you don't have a team currently, right?
No,
Oh, well.
I just have somebody who helps me with marketing. So
Mhm,
he does this outreach to former users and
mhm,
potential users now, and yeah, trying to get them to try it out and see how it
mhm.
works and report back.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. I think Ashish has a question. Ashish, please go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question. Thanks, Christian, for sharing. It's an interesting tool, and obviously it can save a lot of money. Now, my question is on your journey from being a AWS person to being an entrepreneur. How the sides are different? Like why you chose that, and what you miss about AWS, or what is good in
Mm,
current role. So I want to know the difference of the opinion from your perspective.
yeah. So basically, I always wanted this, and I kind of, for me, it was like a stopgap being at AWS, and I kind of, on the long term, I always wanted to go on my own eventually. And once I thought I'm ready, I left and started this like this journey. What is something that's very important in both roles is having visibility. I mean, being visible and doing things in public and talking to people, and like this part of the role as an essay. I mean, probably I didn't do it as much as I'm doing it now. So now I really double down on making content, being all over the place, and yeah, that's something that is very useful also within AWS. It's also about this like having no anxiety of talking to people, which I used to have before. So I'm quite introvert, from like my nature is introvert, and I always struggled to reach out and talk to like potential customers or whatever. But as I was working at AWS and SAs have a lot of customer calls, I had like every week I had like 2 or 3 calls with customers, and I got so fluent in front of them that I no longer have this anxiety. And that was also a thing that I wanted to learn from this role and apply it. And I really apply it nowadays. I talk every other day with startup CEOs and yeah, all sorts of executives, and so I have no problem with that anymore. Um, what else
That's
am I missing anything from your question? Or
No, that's covered it now. So being an entrepreneur, like you need to be little disciplined. That's my guess is. What are other things you have to be worried about? Because some of our participants may be looking for similar type of things. Maybe they are currently in their job, they have idea of a product, they may want to move forward. So what should be the top advice you could give to them?
yeah, in both cases you have to be deliberate on what you're like, following your goals, your career goals. Think of on the long term where you want to get. um, and yeah, it's all about like being disciplined and doing the right things and trying to see what are the right things for your role, and yeah, focus on those. But as an entrepreneur, I mean, as an SA, it's a pretty well defined role. So if you go and talk to more senior people, you can see like what is the path that you should be following, and there are some clear alternatives on what kind of career progression you can have. Like from the generalist SA, you may go for a specialist SA or whatever. When you're an entrepreneur, you have to forge it all by yourself, and there are so many things you can try. And yeah, you have to be very careful where you invest your time and what are you focusing on. So you have much more freedom, but also with freedom comes responsibility and a lot of things that you have to say no to and focus on the right things.
that That's awesome. There is an interesting question in the chat. Can we help you in some sort of way voluntarily? So, see, people are getting excited about the awesome product that you are
Yeah.
building and your future products as well. So, people are keen to help to get some experience. So, what would be your answer?
I mean, thank you so much for offering. Any sort of help is more than welcome. I mean, as a if you're AWS, probably you're not really allowed to go and promote my tools to customer. I mean, I don't know how it works, um, but basically, if you're not in AWS, I recommend you to try it out and report if you find any issues, any feedback. Yeah, all sorts of these things are very useful. AutoSpotting is still open source, so I have the source code is still available. I didn't really publish the latest version as an open source, but I will probably eventually do it. So one way you could help is looking at issues, maybe coming up with a filing some issues or even pull requests. And yeah, more than happy to consider those and to be like, if you're becoming part of the community, yeah, that would be really helpful, and I'm very thankful for that.
Great. And I think they can reach out to you on LinkedIn and book some time. So please feel free to do that. We're all here to support each other, especially entrepreneurs. So feel free to do that. Feel free to share on LinkedIn. I will share on LinkedIn as well. And this recording will be available on YouTube as well. If there is no questions, I won't waste anyone's time anymore. It was lovely to meet you again, Christian. I wish you best of luck in your entrepreneurship career. I wish your product to prosper, to be next big thing, where your colleagues, ex-colleagues will look at it and say proudly that I worked with this man. I know how bright he is, and his product will be awesome. So I hope one day you will get there. Even if you don't have that ambition, I'm just sending you that energy, so you can kind of once you log off, you will have full of energy, and you will go and do things that you were planning to do a long time, but you never get to the point that you have to do it. So thank you for joining. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Jamila, and I'm very excited to be, yeah, for all these nice words, and for what's coming next. And yeah, I'm trying to see how to make it work. So yeah, it's a pretty exciting journey. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you too. And feel free to tap on our BeSA network. I mean, we have a LinkedIn group. You can post there if you need people who are independent. I mean, not from AWS, can test or any sorts of engagement. Yeah, so feel free to tap on our BeSA network as well. Feel free to reach out to me as well if you have any questions, any needs from my side. I'll be happy to support, and I bet our BeSA community as well will be happy to support.
Thank you so much, and thanks everybody for listening.
Yeah, thanks support. A lot. Yeah, thank you everyone for joining. Have a lovely weekend. Thank you, Ash. Come along. Yes.
Thank you. Thanks, Christian. It was nice to interact with you and to know about it. And I am impressed, to be honest, like being in a safe place, but thinking like, hey, I need to steer off. I need to do something which interests me, which I have a long-term goal for. That's impressive. Not everyone is bold enough to take those steps. So all the best, and we hope to see you again in some more session, sharing more of the wisdom. So thank you so much.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Next week, have a good one, and hopefully, we will catch you up. Have a good Diwali and celebrate time with your friends and family. Thank you so much. Take care. See you
Thank
next week.
you.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.